welcome to Unapologetic with Jeffress Sadler, where we unapologetically share God's truth on today's topics. Today we have the absolute honor of speaking with former White House press secretary and New York Times best-selling author, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sarah Huckabee Sanders served as the White House press secretary from 2017 to 2019. She was the third woman and the first mother to ever hold the position. She's the daughter of former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee and has worked in leadership roles for U.S. senators, governors, and presidential campaigns. I'm so excited to speak with her today. Thank you for joining us. Sarah, we are so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be back with you and have a little bit of fun today.
Yes. Okay, so I was so excited that you're here because you just embody what the Unapologetic show is about. We are encouraging Christians, Christian women, Christian moms to stop apologizing for their faith. So with that in mind, obviously with your background, what would you say is the number one thing Christians need to stop apologizing for?
Well, I think one of the lessons that my parents taught me at an early age that has been so important for me, particularly as the White House press secretary, but in everything I've done, is to always be myself. And I think we have to stop trying to be somebody other than who God created us to be, and stop apologizing for not being perfect or for not living up to what the world standards are, and just be who God created us to be and not apologize for being anything other than that.
That's so true, and I think that's really neat if you know, obviously, who you are. I work mainly with young girls who they're still kind of trying to figure that out. What would you say to them?
Well, I think, at the end of the day, God created all of us with a unique purpose and has a plan for our life. And if you follow that plan, which isn't always easy, in fact, many times it's not. It's the harder path to take, which is what makes us more reliant on God, more reliant on our faith. And so pushing ourselves to really follow that direction, follow that path, and not being afraid to step out and be on our own a little bit, in the world's sense of being alone, and knowing that we always have somebody with us, that God is there every step of the way. And that gives us confidence. Certainly for me, before I ever walked in to step behind that podium, knowing that I wasn't up there by myself made such a big difference and gave me confidence that I needed to face even the most difficult challenges.
Man, that's amazing. Okay, how did you decide what your purpose was? How did that come about?
Well, every time I decided it was something, God usually let me know that wasn't exactly what He wanted for me. And sometimes it changes. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would have been Donald Trump's press secretary and living in Washington, D.C., I probably would have laughed. I mean, that was just not the path I thought that I was on. Had no intentions of leaving Arkansas or going down that direction. But the doors just kept opening, and God made clear that was where He wanted me and the place that He wanted, and gave me the strength to do that job for 2.5 years. And knowing, getting that kind of sense of peace is how I found that direction. And again, so many times it can change. And what I thought when I was 16 that I would be doing at this age, even what I thought when I was 25 what I would be doing at this age, is very different. But being open to God's plan and knowing that it may not be the same tomorrow as it is today. He knows what it is, but we're going to find out in His time, and being willing to adapt to that and make those changes has been very important certainly for our family.
Right, definitely. I like what you said about peace. I think about a lot of Christians, like they don't always talk about the Holy Spirit, kind of scared to talk about that. But just that peace of knowing you're in the right place. I think I don't know if you've had this experience, but a lot of young people kind of think following God's boring. Like, oh, that means that I don't get to have an exciting life or do meaningful things. And if I really want to go after my dreams, I need to go another direction. What would you say to that?
Well, I think God put me in the White House, and that's the least boring place I've ever been. Right. So my life following God's path has definitely been anything but. In fact, I found it exciting when you are stepping out in faith and stepping out in trust. You don't know everything that's going to happen because there's not this, perfect vision that you have created, but He has one for you, and you're stepping out in faith and into that unknown. And I think that can be very exciting, sometimes terrifying even. And again, I look at my own life and know that the path that I've taken has been certainly not just exciting, but very fulfilling.
Right.
And I wouldn't change anything about it.
That's awesome. Such a good message. Okay, secondly, whenever we found out you were coming, I text so many people. I was like, what is the one thing you want me to ask her? Okay, so you were third woman that was ever the White House press secretary, but first mom. How did you balance it all? That's what everyone wants to know. How did you do it?
Some days are more difficult than others. Like every mom you have, I think, challenges. One of the things I found that is so difficult, whether you're in a high stress job or you're a stay-at-home mom, I think moms and women in general put so much pressure on one another to be perfect. Mm-hmm. We're constantly looking at the highlight reels of one another's life on social media. Mm-hmm. And when we can block some of that out and realize that you're struggling with some of the same things that I am, and that nobody's life looks like it does on Instagram every single day. You're looking at the perfect vacation picture and family photo and birthday party and perfect lunches. And we put so much pressure to live up to that standard. Mm-hmm. And when we put that away and focus on the biblical standard to live up to, I think it actually makes things a lot easier. One of the things that we tried to do in our family was engage our kids to be part of what we were doing. Instead of trying to separate them from it, but bring them with us, let them see why it was important for us to serve. And that gave us time together, but it also helped give us some moments to really talk to our kids about the work that we were doing, which seemed to help make them feel like they were part of it, and also let them know that they were important and a priority. I found that so often, if I can be intentional with my time with my kids, even if I have 30 minutes, putting my phone aside and letting that time really be focused on them makes such a big difference when I can't be there all day, every day, for every moment. Just making sure they constantly know that they're a priority and the priority for our family, then that really helps.
Yes, definitely. I think about that with ministry and think about that with your job, but really that goes into anything we do, helping them understand why we do things. How much did they get to go to the White House during all of that? Was that common, or?
We started to make it a little more common probably than it had been. But, the president was actually pretty understanding. One of my favorite moments and favorite pictures, it's actually in my book, is on Halloween one year. And I told the president, I really have to go. My kids are doing the trick-or-treating in the executive building next door. And he goes, they're here? And I was like, yes, sir. He goes, bring them in. And I was like, really? I was like, they're in costumes. He's like, so? He's like, I have candy. And so he goes, I have big boxes of candy. And I was like, okay. So I bring my kids in. My boys are both in full Batman costume. My daughter's like a fairy princess, kind of sparkly giraffe. And we come in, and I have this great picture of my kids high-fiving the president in costume. And he gave them an enormous amount of candy, and they, thought it was the coolest thing ever. So there were a lot of great moments where I got to bring them and do stuff with them, and sometimes went better like that, and then other times I was like, we may lose our job today, but
I know, I remember that story where one of them hit the window or something.
Huck pushed his face up against the glass of the Oval Office. So
funny.
But
I don't have a picture with the president and our kids. I had just found out I was pregnant with triplets and then met the president the next day. So I have a picture where I'm like, of course I wasn't showing, but I was like, there are 3 babies inside me, and there's the president of the United States. I was like, crazy. I love that. That's so fun. I know we both are on the same page with this, and we're millennials, but there's another generation. We're not the youngest generation anymore. There's that Generation Z. But a lot of people, no matter really the age, didn't necessarily grow up like we did, understanding the connection and conservative values and beliefs in Christianity. I see people constantly saying, I don't understand. What's the connection here? Why does it matter if Christians vote or get involved in politics? What's the connection with conservative values? So for the 2020 election, someone who just doesn't understand it all, how would you explain to them why this election and voting for our values, why does that matter to people of faith?
Well, I think because if we're really living out our faith, you don't separate those things. So often people say, oh, if you're in public service, you shouldn't talk about your faith. Well, I think the opposite is true. A lot of people that have a deep and true faith that are in public service because of their faith. It is what defines them. And I don't think you should separate it. You shouldn't force it on anybody else, but you can't separate that from who you really are. And one of the things that I think is probably so vivid, at least right now, given what's going on, is the Supreme Court and how much that is going to impact not just the next couple of years, but generational impact is who is on the Supreme Court. So elections matter, both from the presidential level to the Senate, and what we've seen over the last 6 months in our local communities, who's making decisions that really impact every aspect of your life. And if you want people who reflect your values to make decisions about your life, your kid's life, then you have to go vote. You have to be involved. And I think that people of faith should be driven to vote more so than anybody else because they want their values reflected in their leaders and in the policies that are being put forward by those people.
Something your dad said this morning, he preached this morning for everyone listening at First Baptist Church in Dallas, but he talked about just a lot of us don't know the spiritual heritage of our country, and that most of the most prestigious colleges and universities were seminaries, and they were training pastors, and that's just, you just don't hear that. Like, I grew up in public school. I didn't know that. I knew that because of my dad, but there's a lot that's really been lost, and I didn't ask you to prep for this, but what would you say resource-wise for people that want to learn more about faith and politics or the spiritual heritage of our country?
Well, I think one of the places I found, I have no affiliation. My dad is an honorary member of the group, but to be clear, I have no direct affiliation. But there's a group called My Faith Votes. And I think they do a very good job of identifying values and candidates that support Christian values and breaking that down in a way that everybody can understand. And I think they just provide a lot of practical resources on their website. And it's a great place, I think, for people to go, a consolidated place, so you don't have to search around 10 different places. But My Faith Votes does a really great job of providing, I think, a lot of that information and those resources.
That's awesome. We'll have to check that out. We'll provide that link at the end. Okay, well, thank you. I know you have a lot of stuff you're still doing, but before we sign off, we want to talk about Sarah Huckabee Sanders' book, Speaking for Myself. Just it's so amazing. I love the title, but Speaking for Myself, Faith, Freedom, and the Fight of Our Lives Inside the Trump White House, which is available everywhere books are sold.
Everywhere. Amazon, every bookstore hopefully should have it. If not, you should demand that they get it. And but you should be able to find it anywhere.
And how else should people keep up with you?
They can go to my website, speakingformyself.com. They can get books there, autographed books there as well, and keep up with events that are coming up too.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for stopping by. And as we say on Unapologetic, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. So thank you, Sarah, for standing for truth, and I hope that all of us were encouraged to do the same.